Because like recently, my friend linked me a dance your PhD thesis challenge, and I was like, oh my gosh, like could I potentially dance my project?
Welcome back to the WazaMedia podcast. My name is JR. I am the CEO of this company, and we've got a really special guest today, and really excited to bring her on board. But first, I want to give a small plug. It's not sponsored, but I want to put a plug in for Morning Brew. And if you're a busy person like me, keeping up with news and going on what's in the world is a really hard thing to do. So Morning Brew really helps me find out what's going on first thing in the morning. It does anywhere from stocks to news and what's going on. So if you need a easy digest to just culminate everything from PR to stocks to world news, vaccines, I highly recommend signing up for Morning Brew. And the best part, it's free. So if you want to use our code, go to waza.media/morningbrew. Once again, that's waza.media/morningbrew. I'm super pumped to bring in our guest to the show today. We have Daisy Xu. Daisy is currently a postdoctoral research fellow in the St. Genis Laboratory at Harvard Medical School. She completed her optometry degree at the University of South Wales, Sydney, Australia, and she worked for 2 years as a clinical optometrist before pursuing her PhD at the Lens Research Laboratory at the University of Sydney, Australia. And she loves science communication, and she enjoys sharing her scientific research journey on social media. Daisy, it's really nice to see you again.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, JR.
And for our audience, Daisy and I have seen each other the last 5 weeks. We've been in a really awesome program. Daisy, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we just completed our Alt MBA, which is a really fantastic program run by Seth Godin. He started it, and essentially it's a sprint. It's like really intense. We get these prompts, which are essentially mini assignments that we do, and we are assigned to learning groups, which change every week. And one of the learning groups, my final learning group. Well, my final like a new learning group was with JR. And so that's where we met, and it was super fun. We just like bounced ideas off of each other, and we got these really, transformative like experiences from just like talking to each other and just like engaging with the material that we're given. It's really interesting videos, essays just online. That stimulated so many interesting thoughts and to really challenge the way we view the world and how the narratives that we tell each other.
I think that's an awesome plug for Alt MBA. And for anyone who wants to take the Alt MBA program, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's we gave up so much time for it. Our weekends, and we had night sessions, and there's it's this is not for the faint of heart. So if you're looking for something that's easy that you can just get by, no, this is absolutely not it. And the other part, correct me if I'm wrong, Daisy, there's no certification, there's no certificate, nothing substantial that you could put anything of that sort. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's really just like what you put in, you're going to get out of, and it's very organic. It's sort of like you roll with it. You get this prompt, and then you explore, and it's uncharted territory. However far you go is what you're going to get out of it.
The biggest thing I got out of it was perspective. I got a better perspective from all the different people. I didn't realize our class was so big. I think there were 300 something people in our commencement earlier this week.
Yeah, it's huge. My biggest takeaway, I just can't get over the empathy task that we had to do, the empathy prompt. Like that really hit me, and just being able to put myself in someone else's shoes and really engage with that activity. Like I've been using that concept throughout my just like day-to-day life now. I'm like, okay, how would I feel if I was in that person's shoes? And it's like transformed. Once again, it's that perspective that I've gained.
I'm looking forward to taking what I've learned, and I know you're looking forward to do the same, and to see where it takes us in the world, because it's definitely life changing those last 5 weeks. And the big thing, and I know that we talked about this earlier, is what do you plan to do with all your new free time?
30 hours apparently per week now that I have extra. I have no idea. I actually really want to dive into the literature a bit more with my current project. I attended a webinar yesterday where I was super inspired. Like the speaker was just next level with like his understanding of the content of my field, which is in metabolism, and understanding how that affects cells and how that gets hijacked during disease states. And he just knew it so well. I was just so inspired. I just want to dive deeper into my research topic, and hopefully those extra hours can be put to good use for my current research.
That's awesome. Daisy B, I did a small, very, very small bio about you in the beginning, but I think it's important that you give our audience a little bit more about yourself. So, as we traditionally say on the WazaMedia podcast with our guests that come on, is please tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my story, I guess, let's begin at the very beginning. I was born and raised in Sydney, Australia, and how I got into eyes, I mean, right now, fast forward till now, I'm like basically obsessed with the eyes. And the question is how that all started. And I do believe it was that fateful optometry examination that I did when I was, a little girl, and I couldn't see very well the board, and literally to the point where if I had to copy something from the board, I would verify with the person next to me. So it wasn't very efficient, and I just couldn't actually like observe anything of the surroundings from the far distance. And when I got my eyes tested, I was able to see, and it was almost miraculous in just the sheer clarity of what I could see. And I had no issues whatsoever with copying from the board. And it was so bizarre because I would go into the optometry examination room and I would just answer a few questions, as you know, and then have some lights shone on me. And then all of a sudden I could see. I just thought that was really cool. And I guess that just propelled me into getting more and more curious about our visual system and the eyes. And eventually I ended up getting into optometry school, doing that. I worked in clinical practice for 2 years. But during my optometry degree, what happened was I had this opportunity to actually do a research program for 6 weeks at the end of my 4th year. And I was just like, okay, wow, I'm in a lab now, I'm wearing gloves, I'm mixing chemicals, seeing colors change, and like dissecting tissues and things like that. And I was just like, this is so fun and so cool. And the mentor at the time, Dr. Michelle Madigan, she basically told me that I was a natural at this and that I should consider pursuing a PhD in the future. So that really stuck with me. It was always in the back of my mind. So even when I was working as an optometrist, once I'd graduated, I was like, oh, what about that PhD that I was considering? And fast forward 2 more years of optometry practice, I basically decided to sign up for a PhD program. And I did that in cataract research, where I studied how do cataracts form, how can we potentially block them from forming. And then 4 years later, I did my postdoc, and now I'm right here in Boston.
Awesome. That's quite the journey. And the one thing I was going to say during your background is you saw the light, and then it
Yes,
came
I did.
it came to you that this is what you're going to do. So I think that's awesome, and how where something from your childhood has brought you to where you are today. And the big reason why you're here on the podcast is I brought you on because I am interested in talking more about how you got into social media. and that was one of the things in our Alt MBA program. I'm sure a lot of our colleagues were doing this too, but everyone is stalking each other's socials. Everyone's checking the LinkedIn and wanted to see who's in my group and how can I learn more about them. So um, I really enjoy stalking your Instagram profile.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like is there's this photo that I see about your pipette cursor in Microsoft Word.
Yes, that was so fun. I literally just did that of a morning. I couldn't do anything except make a pipette cursor, make that happen. That was so fun. So basically, we had a workshop training session for this new plate reader. So it's a machine that reads these like plates that you insert, and it can read like how much light's coming from it, how much absorbance at different like wavelengths and all of that. But it's like really new and shiny, and our one was I think like 10 years old, so we really needed an update. But the company had created this really cool software so that you could use a pipette cursor to define what each little well was in the plate. And I was like, why can't I do that for my own computer? And so I just Googled like how to do it, and I just couldn't help myself. I was making all these little random like pipette cursors of different styles because there's so many different brands of pipettes. So I was like trying to pick and choose which one I wanted. And yeah, it was really fun to just orient it in the right direction. Yeah, and then basically I got really obsessed with pipette cursors.
And I really like how you show life at the lab. I'm looking at this photo from your feed. You've got a yellow tray and you've got blue topped tubes, and it's making a smiley face.
Yeah, that was fun. Those are actually PCR primers.
Ah.
And we just received a shipment, but because I received so many, I was able to like create an image from them. So that was just really lucky that I ordered like I think 50 primers, and so I ended up having so many blue tubes.
That's awesome. It looks like a lot of fun. And for yourself being a scientist in your world and being able to show that visually, that helps me connect because for me, I am a visual person. And so I feel like I'm able to connect with what you do, even though I don't completely understand what you do, but I have a better understanding through the visuals. So thank you for doing that. I do want to dive in more about how you got into social because you're very public on the socials. You've got your LinkedIn, you got Twitter, and on Instagram. You've got your a website that talks about you, which is awesome. And so, tell me more about how you got into social media as a scientist and what got you to do that.
Well, it all started in the first year of my PhD, where I attended a really amazing seminar run by this person called Hugh Kearns. And he is from Adelaide and he travels around the world actually. But he managed to stumble across our university. Well, we probably invited him. But essentially, like it was a huge auditorium packed with, I guess, PhD students, postdocs, and we were all listening to this person tell us that we needed to self-advocate. Basically, no one's going to do it for you. You need to get yourself out there. And this is like me just starting my PhD. I didn't even know how to use a pipette. I hadn't even held a pipette for like forever, basically, since the 6 weeks I had at the end of fourth year. And then fast forward to like PhD, I'd like basically put myself in the deep end because as a clinical optometrist, there's not much exposure at all to the research lab world. So I was pretty much yeah, in the deep end. I wasn't sure what was happening. And then here's this guy saying, you need to self-promote. And I was like, okay, what do I do? And so that night, I basically created the Twitter account because he was like, guys, you need to get onto Twitter as a scientist. It's essential. And he's way ahead of his time. This is 2015. Not many scientists were on Twitter at the time. And
So
so
when is your Twitter birthday?
My Twitter birthday, I believe it's like August 1st or August 15th, 2015, I believe, or something along those lines, because it does say on your account.
Yep.
Yeah, I should celebrate that day.
That's the day Daisy got on Twitter. It's definitely a
Yeah.
day.
So the funny thing is I didn't post anything because I didn't know what to post. So that was kind of like, he gave us some ideas and things. I didn't have any publications at the time. So I was like, oh, maybe I should wait till I get my first paper. That's going to be my first tweet. And then time just went on and I kind of just carried on with my research stuff. I attended some conferences. People at conferences started to tag me on my Twitter. And I sort of just retweeted that or like that. I'd never posted anything until I attended this networking event in 2017. That's when it all started. So it was a networking event run by Franklin Women, which is a networking event to serve women in science. And we had this seminar, and then on the slides they had a hashtag and a Twitter handle to tag. So I was like, okay, well, let's try this out. So I was like, I'm just here at the Franklin Women Networking event, and then I did the hashtags and tags. And then when I clicked the hashtag specific to this event, there was a whole series of tweets I was missing out on. Like, there was a whole bustling world of busyness in this virtual setting that was happening simultaneously to the live meeting. And I was like, this is what it's all about. So that's when I started to get more involved. I started following all the women who attended that event, and I started to see exactly how it's done. How do scientists promote themselves on Twitter and engage and build that community? And ever since then, I've just been tweeting nonstop.
Self-advocation and self-promotion. Do you see a benefit for scientists such as yourself for sharing information? And I see from your Instagram feed that, you know, the visual what life is like at the lab, but over just in the general sense of self-advocacy, what do you see the advantages for scientists as yourself doing so and sharing information on social media?
Yeah, there's actually huge advantages to being a scientist on social media, because it means that whatever all your research findings can be shared to a wider, a more global audience and instantaneously. So if you find something really novel, if you publish a paper that you just want to share to the world, well, you've got that platform now, and it basically gives you that voice to amplify any messages. If you've just been awarded a grant, any sort of award, you can amplify that. And not only that, you can amplify your peers' accomplishments as well. You can easily retweet them, quote that retweet, tag them on Instagram. And it's basically building this community that lift each other up and keep, cheering each other on, sharing information. And all the journals are now on Twitter, and probably soon enough they'll be on Instagram. But basically, every time they publish they push a paper through to publication, they usually tweet about it. And so you can instantly access all this information in a snippet, because it's so succinctly put in 280 characters or less, that you can just like absorb all that information instantaneously. And any pictures that come along with it, you can see it. It's very fast paced on Twitter, and you can get that information. You can even use Twitter as a crowdsourcing tool for any of your experimental protocols. If you're struggling to optimize an experiment, you can reach out to your Twitter community. And I've gotten so many amazing tips on Twitter, actually, just by crowdsourcing those ideas.
I keep thinking before Twitter, how long the scientific process was for peer review, you know, where journals would have to be submitted. And that was, and this predates even further. The only way that you could learn about another person's research was after it was published by a peer of professionals through a board or through a journal. And so you'd have to wait for the physical publication to be sent to you, and then you would read about what your colleagues are doing in the field. But now with social media, speed has become the key, where instant collaboration, instant sharing. And I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, that things could progress even faster now just because of speed of information.
I totally agree. Back in the day, my PhD supervisor told me about how he had to write letters to request for specific journals. And so I'm like, that process, the snail mail process, would have slowed down everything so much. And so fast forward till now, you don't even have to consider it. You just literally Google it and you'll access anything you want. And yeah, so that has certainly sped up the process. There is a new way for people to publish their articles immediately on bioarchives. So you don't need to go through the peer review process yet. You can instantly have the data out there. And that because the peer review process takes time, at least it's out there so the public can see what research is happening and what's out there, whilst it is getting in the peer review state and then eventually published in the peer review journal. So things are happening so much faster now.
There's an article when I was in my previous life as a nurse, and this was years ago, where my nursing instructor would tell us that there were about 30 or 40 new medical articles published today. And so she would ask, how far behind are you in reading the latest up-to-date news?
That is so true. It's always playing catch up with the literature now. It's that fast.
And that was then like 10, 12, 15 years ago when I first learned that from my nursing instructor. Now with speed of information with social media, I would be so far behind just because of everything is moving so quickly and of information, which is not a bad thing. I think we're able to, especially in the world of science, progress faster and collaborate more because we have this network of sharing. And just as you mentioned, and I think that's the key word, you're building community with social media.
Definitely. It's about finding your tribe and finding the people that love your research and are inspired by you and that you inspire as well.
Speaking of tribe, I want to go back to some of your social media platforms. Now, I definitely follow you on Twitter and on Instagram, but is there a platform that you prefer to use to connect with other scientists or just with the general population? Which one's more fun for you?
I would have to say more fun is definitely Instagram, but more practical is Twitter. And the reason is that Instagram captions aren't clickable. When they start making those links clickable, that's when it'd be a lot more just efficient and easy to use. But Twitter is definitely my medium of choice if I'm posting about linking my latest publication. Well, I'll definitely use Twitter to promote that. And the journals are actually on Twitter, so I won't be able to tag them on Instagram, for example. Instagram is certainly more fun because it's just so much more visually engaging, as you mentioned. I am certainly much more of a visual person as well, so that's how my brain works, and I get a kick out of seeing fun videos and photos. So definitely more fun on Instagram. But Twitter also has those mechanisms too, like posting videos and photos. It is more, I would say, like just fast paced with the kind of short tweets and links. So that's why I do find that difference between the two platforms.
Do you see yourself putting yourself on TikTok? Do you see yourself in the lab doing dances as a way of communicating and sharing the information? Do you think that's somewhere in your? Do you have a TikTok future?
Possibly. That would be super cool. Because like recently, my friend linked me a dance your PhD thesis challenge. And I was like, oh my gosh, like could I potentially dance my project? I don't even know. Also, I don't know how to dance, so that's another issue. But
Yeah, I'm not very
certainly,
coordinated myself, so I try to not to show the public that I physically can hurt myself.
yeah, but I could definitely see myself on TikTok in the future. It's just that sort of that momentum I got to build to like actually get it going. But once I get it going, I'll probably be really into TikTok.
and there's so many new platforms that are coming out. You know, there's Clubhouse, and there's other features. Like, for instance, I mentioned Clubhouse because recently Instagram has this new feature that's similar to Clubhouse, where you can add 4 people to a room. That sounds like what Clubhouse is, but it's also visually. So you could go live with up to 4 people at the same time, and it would be considered a room or something like that. I'm still exploring with it. I'm sure that might be something for you to try out. Maybe try out with some of your colleagues and see if you could do a live event and collaborate. Hey, I just published my paper or my thesis on this. Could we schedule an event to do a live chat and then maybe get some comments from the field?
That's a great idea. I had no idea that they had like a Clubhouse alternative sort of thing. I signed up for Clubhouse and I've yet to engage and like get into it because I feel like there's just so many platforms. It's actually really hard to keep up. But yes, there's so much potential there to utilize that that sort of room setting to just start a discussion.
And to think how much more of a community in a smaller setting that you could get and how much feedback you could get. It almost makes me, you know, I know we keep revisiting all NBA throughout this conversation because that's still fresh in our mind. Of, and just having that small group dynamic where it's intimate enough, and you're with like-minded people, and then you could share thoughts and feelings and get feedback. And I think that's very valuable. And I'm definitely in your field. It's very important.
Yeah, all feedback is great feedback. Just hearing someone else's perspective on your current project, it really helps you zoom out and just see your project differently. Because we do get stuck in the nitty gritty of our projects, especially I do, like down to like small, very small experiment, and so kind of like refining that to the nth degree, but not being able to like zoom out and look at it with that new perspective, that the new ideas and that discussion, you can finally really see the bigger picture better.
I want to talk to you about your audience. Now, I know the content that you're putting out is from your background as a scientist. Um, have you gotten a chance to look at what your demographics are, or the types of people that follow you? Are they other scientists as well, or do you find that there's people who are learning to be someone like you in the future, and they're asking questions? Have you gotten a bit of a pulse of what your audience is?
Yeah, I would say that mostly they are other scientists, especially on Twitter, where the scientific community is a lot bigger. I often see more of the scientists engaging with me. I do get a handful of non-scientists, which is super awesome because it just goes to show that what I'm doing is reaching like a broader non-science community, which is hopefully like inspiring them to appreciate science more. And on Instagram, I would say that mostly are scientists, but I do probably attract more non-scientists just for the sheer like curiosity of people who are just like intrigued by the images and what it is like to be a scientist.
I'm not sure if you coined the hashtag, but after looking at what life at the lab is, you need to do hashtag that lab life or something like that.
Yeah, hashtag lab life.
Ah, there you go. So it's probably
I gotta
already
do that. Yeah.
Speaking of other scientists that are on social, do you have some of your favorite scientists that you would like to share to our audience that you follow? And let's do top three. If you don't have top three, you can do top one or two. But what are some of your favorite scientists to follow? And then, is there something about their account that makes you want to follow them?
Great question. I have a handful of people that I absolutely love on social media. One particular standout is Science Bay, who is on Instagram and I believe also on Twitter. And what I love about Science Bay is she uses her face as a canvas. So she's excellent at makeup, and she's very, very talented. And then she will basically um, it depict scientific concepts using makeup on her face. I believe it's science.bay. So yeah, it's very very inspiring. So just pulling that up.
Definitely
Yeah,
using the art form.
science.bay at Instagram.
Say that again.
Oh yeah, science.bay on
Science.bay.
Instagram. Yeah.
Oh,
Another
Bay,
favorite.
Bay as in
Yeah, Bay.
B-A-E.
Yeah,
Okay,
BAE.
gotcha. So,
Bay, yeah.
so for our listening audience, it's science.bay as in B-A-E, also like Salt Bay with the salt
Yeah,
coming.
Salt
So
Bay.
B-A-E. Awesome.
Um,
And she's from Canada.
Brian Thompson, he's a fellow eye researcher and also lens researcher. He's currently a PhD student at Yale. I love his content too. He's also a big climate change advocate. So he's got a lot of interesting content, and he's on Instagram. He's Bry the Science Guy, which I find super cool. So yeah, he's really fun.
Bry the science guy. That sounds like somebody similar.
Yeah.
But that's why it makes sense, and that's why it sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a smart man. He knows. Another one I have to pull up. I'm gonna have to give a shout out to my PI, my boss. So we have a lab account, and it's St. Genie's Lab, ST, and a surname GENIEZ Lab. And so a lot of labs will have their own lab Twitter or Instagram accounts, and then essentially you'll have your own personal one for each person. That's the way I like to do it, and it's because like if you're a PhD student, well, when you graduate, it's always good to have your own personal account in addition to contributing to the lab handle, because then you'll be able to take that, and that will be basically almost like an online CV for you to track all your accomplishments, achievements, engagements with other people over time as you move to a different lab, and then contribute to that lab handle, but also have your own personal scientific lab handle as well.
That's awesome. And are you sometimes featured in that that handle?
Yeah. So my boss will retweet some of my accomplishments and things, which is awesome.
And that really goes in back to what you're talking about with that community and sharing. So that's awesome. I do want to talk to you about, you talked about your beginnings of getting into social media and how you talked about you learned through another professor or someone else about the importance of self-advocacy and self-promotion, and that the purpose is really for helping to share information. And now in the world with speed, you can do it easier and faster. If there was someone that you met, another fellow scientist looking to get into social media, do you have a couple tips? Do you have top 3 tips that you would recommend for them to get started on social media, just like how you did?
My top tip is to lock in your account name and make sure that account name is consistent across all the platforms. There are character restrictions on Twitter for the number of characters you can have for your handle. So try to make it short and succinct and match that with your Instagram or other platforms, because that just makes it easier when you're like copy and pasting captions, for example. You don't need to make minor edits of numbers or letters. And once you've locked that in, you don't need to start posting immediately, but as long as you lock that in, because chances are if you delay that for a year or so, that will be taken up very quickly. And post regularly. When you get started and get a rhythm going, I highly recommend just keep posting, and then through posting, the act of posting, you'll be able to learn how to post, make mistakes, just get out there and try it out, see what works, see what doesn't, what kind of images are more engaging, what images don't work as well, and you'll be able to quickly learn and grow that following. And just have fun with it. Sometimes whenever you're in the lab and have a little break, you can just take a snap of a photo, a fun photo of you in the lab. And it really serves as a great mental break for me, especially when I'm in the lab and it's been like I've just been, pipetting for like ages. Just taking that little mental break on Instagram is just what I need to keep me going again.
Those are some great tips, and your feeds are great examples of things to do. You've got you've got a variety of different things of you in the lab, you and you with your colleagues, but there's also this other part where you're going out and doing things. I see you in a kayak in the water. You're doing out and doing some recreational things. And so I think that helps it gives me a broader sense of who you are as a person, things that you do, that you're more than just a scientist, even though that's how you probably identify yourself as, and where it's a huge part of your life right now. But you are more than what you do for a living. You like to go outside, you like to cook, or you like to eat. And there's more to you than that. And I think that helps put you as a person. And then this kind of goes along to another conversation about branding yourself as a scientist.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's about creating an understanding of like who you are as a person, and by showcasing different aspects of your life with a focus on the science, but also throwing in those extra things that I do, the hobbies, and just life for me, what it's like in Boston right now. And for me personally, that's also a great way for me to keep on holding on to those really fun memories that I had, especially like thinking back to that photo of me on the Charles River kayaking. Right now, like we're just coming out of like a really cold Boston winter, and looking back on that memory, I'm like, it was really beautiful weather in Boston once upon a time. Remember that, Daisy? So yeah, for me, it's great to just keep track of those memories, and it's a fun thing to look back on.
That's awesome. Daisy, as we're wrapping up this awesome episode, how can before we wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to say as far as a final word?
Get out there and get on social media and start sharing your scientific research journey. I'm excited to see it and follow everybody who's out there who's a scientist, and just keep building that community online.
And speaking of social media, how can our audience find you, Daisy?
You'll find me at iDaisyShu, which is right there. So, at EYE Daisy Shu on Instagram and Twitter. And I have created the Facebook, but I haven't really posted anything because I do have my own personal Facebook account, which I'm still kind of figuring out. And you'll also find me at daisyshu.com. So that's super easy. And on LinkedIn, Daisy Shu as well. So definitely check those out and follow me.
Awesome, Daisy. Thanks for being on the show today, and thank you for sharing about your experience. And I'm looking forward to following more of your photos. And I'm looking forward to your first TikTok or Instagram Reel dance video.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I need to start choreographing something.
Take a lesson from me. Just try not to hurt yourself. I've hurt myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely have to try hard. I probably shouldn't do it. I don't know if I should do it in the lab or out in public. I'll have to figure that one out. It might be more fun in the lab.
I think it would be. It would be.
Yeah.
Just make sure you check the area that it's safe.
Yes. Yeah. Clear the zone.
Thanks for watching our video. If you want to learn more about WazaMedia, go to our main channel over here. And if you want to see more podcast episodes, go over here. See you next time.